So, guys, I've got some major updates from the training camp that, honestly, I wasn't expecting. One rookie has completely changed the conversation at camp, and he's given the coaching staff every reason to think about giving him more and more reps. And he's been making so many plays that he might already be catching Patrick Mahomes' attention. Yes, I'm talking about spectacular one-handed catches, separations, and big plays every single day. So I'll break down why this rookie has become one of the biggest stories of training camp, what his rise could mean for the Chiefs' wide receiver room, and later. We'll dive into a right tackle battle that's suddenly heating up and can have a huge impact on this team heading into Week 1. What's up, Chiefs Kingdom? Welcome to the NFL Playbook Chiefs. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Alright, let's just get right into it because there's one name that keeps coming up over and over again out of Chiefs' camp, and that name is Cyrus Allen. Look, we already knew going in that seeing Patrick Mahomes practicing in full was going to be a huge storyline, and it is. That's a great sign for this team. But even that has kind of taken a back seat right now because Cyrus Allen is the story of camp. This young guy is out there stacking good day after good day, and when a rookie wide receiver does that during the summer, you pay attention, right? You don't just brush it off as one flashy practice. I'm talking about a guy who's turning heads on a daily basis, and I mean that literally. Coaches are noticing, teammates are noticing, and fans who are out there watching practice are noticing too. Now, I want to be honest with you guys because I think it's important to not get too far ahead of ourselves here. We're going to know a whole lot more once the pads come on and once we actually get into preseason games. Practice in shorts and helmets is one thing. Real football with real contact is a completely different animal. But here's the thing, even with that context in mind, what Cyrus Allen is doing right now is impressive. And I think there's a very fair explanation for part of it too, which is that Rashee Rice isn't running at full speed right now. He's easing back in, he's in a different colored jersey, so the coaches know to be careful with him, and that's opened up a ton of extra reps for Cyrus Allen with the first-team offense. Honestly, I don't think you could just wave this away and say it's only happening because of the extra opportunity, because here's my thinking on it. If this rookie is out there beating first-team defensive backs and making these kinds of plays while working with the ones, what happens when he eventually gets bumped down to second-string competition later in camp? Logic says that should be easier for him, not harder. So, if anything, that tells me this isn't some mirage. This is a guy who's actually talented and is taking full advantage of the door that's been opened for him. Now, let's talk specifically Rashee Rice for a second too, because I know a lot of you are probably wondering where his head's at and where his body's at physically. From what it sounds like, he's probably still a week or two away from being close to 100%. He can run, he's out there working, but the team is clearly being cautious with that knee, and honestly, that's exactly what you want them to be doing. The most important thing in the world right now isn't how he looks in a July practice, it's making sure he's fully healthy and ready to roll by week 1 against the Broncos. He already knows this offense inside and out, so there's no concern about him needing to catch up mentally. This is purely about managing his body the right way, so he's available and productive when the games actually count. So, then the natural question becomes, okay, what does all of this mean for the receivers who are already established in that room? What does it mean for Xavier? What does it mean for Tyquan Thornton? And honestly, I don't think it changes a whole lot for either of them. Here's why. Cyrus Allen isn't really stepping into their roles. He's stepping into more of a slot role, which is closer to what Rashee Rice typically does. So, you're not looking at a situation where he's taking away opportunities from Xavier on the outside or eating into what Tyquan Thornton is doing. Instead, you're looking at a guy who gives this offense a different kind of weapon. Somebody who can line up inside and create issues for a defense in a completely different way than your top 3 receivers already do. And look, if you think about it from a team-building standpoint, this is exactly what you want. You need 4, maybe 5 wide receivers that you can actually trust to go out there and run through your offense. You can't just run the same 3 guys out on every single snap and expect defenses not to figure that out eventually. You need somebody who brings something different to the table, and right now, that's exactly what Cyrus Allen is giving this coaching staff. There was a stretch on Friday where the plays he made were honestly kind of ridiculous for a rookie. He had a one-handed grab over the middle, squeezed in between defenders, which is not an easy thing to do against NFL-level coverage. And then he also had another really nice catch on the sideline against Noah Williams. I mean, this is a guy who's putting good rep after good rep together, and when a rookie starts stacking days like that in camp, it's hard to ignore. If he keeps this up, I genuinely think he locks in that wide receiver 4 spot on this roster pretty comfortably. I'm not saying he's pushing anybody out of the starting 3 because those guys have earned their spots and bring real value in different ways. But as that 4th option, as that extra weapon that can line up in different spots and give this offense multiple different looks, he checks every single box. Now here's what I'll be watching closely going forward, and I think you guys should be watching this too. Does this hold up once the pads come on? Because shorts and helmets, football is one thing, but real physical football is where you actually find out what a guy is made of. Is he still making these same plays once there's real contact involved? And then once we get into preseason games, is he out there with the ones? Is he actually getting targets from Patrick Mahomes in a live setting? That's going to tell us a lot more than anything we've seen so far in camp. But right now, in this moment, this is an encouraging development for Kansas City, and it's the kind of story that gets a fan base excited heading into a new season. Alright, now let's shift over to the offensive line now, because there's something brewing here that I think deserves just as much attention. Khalil Benson has now gotten back-to-back days as the starting right tackle in practice, and that is not something you can just ignore. When a guy gets a second straight day with the first team at a starting spot, that tells you there's something real going on, not just the coaches shuffling bodies around for the sake of it. I'm not saying this means Khalil Benson has already won the job, because we're still really early in camp. But it does tell you there's an actual competition happening at that position, and the coaching staff is genuinely trying to figure out who the best option is going to be. My best guess is that things could shift back toward Jaylen Moore getting his rep as the starter again soon, just so both guys get fair look with the ones. And then it becomes a real question of who steps up once the pads go on and the competition gets more physical and more real. Here's the part that I find really interesting though. A lot of us probably expected the pecking order to go Jaylen Moore, then Khalil Benson, then Esa Pole. But that's not really what's playing out. Esa Pole hasn't been getting first-team right tackle reps at all. In fact, he's been working as the second-string left tackle, which is a pretty different role than a lot of people expected heading into camp. So think about what's actually happening here. On one day, you had Jaylen Moore working as the second-string left tackle and Esa Pole as the second-string right tackle. Then it flipped, with Esa Pole moving to second-string left tackle and Jaylen Moore sliding to second-string right tackle, all while Khalil Benson kept holding on to those first-team right tackle reps. What that tells me is the coaching staff isn't just evaluating who can play right tackle. They're also figuring out who can handle multiple spots on that line, essentially trying to identify who your swing tackle is going to be heading into the season. And that raises a pretty important follow-up question. If Jaylen Moore ends up winning out at right tackle, is Esa Pole actually capable of being that swing tackle option? Or does this roster end up needing to find that answer somewhere else? Because from what it sounds like, Khalil Benson profiles more as a right-side-only guy, not really someone they're looking at to kick out to the left side. So there's a lot still to figure out here. And at the end of the day, none of this gets settled until final roster cuts and until we actually get to week 1 of the regular season. But I think this is genuinely turning into one of the more fascinating training camp battles to watch. And it's the kind of thing that's going to carry all the way through preseason games 1, 2, and even 3. Even if the guy who ends up as the starter doesn't play a ton in those preseason games, whoever's behind him could end up getting a significant amount of snaps. And how that guy performs is going to matter a lot for how the rest of this competition plays out. Personally, I'll be really curious to see if Khalil Benson can take that next step. The strength is already there. Now it all comes down to his technique and cleaning up some of the mistakes we've seen in the past. And it's fair for Chiefs fans to be a little cautious because whoever wins that right tackle job will be protecting a quarterback who's still working his way back from an ACL injury. Patrick Mahomes can still move well, don't get me wrong, but he's probably not going to be moving quite like he used to just yet. That makes solid play at right tackle even more important heading into this season. So, when you step back and look at everything that's happening, these are two of the biggest storylines to watch heading into the 2026 season. You've got Cyrus Allen giving this coaching staff a real reason to be excited about the wide receiver room, and you've got a legitimate battle at right tackle between Khalil Benson and Jaylen Moore. And Esa Pole that's only going to heat up over the next few weeks. Once the pads come on and the preseason begins, we'll get a much better idea of who's making real progress and who's just having a strong start to camp. But for now, these are exactly the kinds of storylines that make training camp so much fun to follow. As always, I'll keep bringing you every Chiefs update as soon as it happens.